Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the Online Series 8 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. I know a lot of people have been asking when are you going to feature a Series 8 team that you built yourself, so finally decided it's time. I built a pretty interesting Xerneas team. Now, I don't think that this will be the most consistent team. One of the reasons why I built it was because I wanted to feature, the last couple of restricted mons that we haven't used on the channel yet, Xerneas being one of them. And Xerneas is pretty tough to work in this format, quite frankly, because there are so many strong steel types, especially Zacian, but also you have Solgaleo, Necrozma, Duskmane, Metagross, Kartana, for example. And unlike 2016 and 2019, when you could have like a fire type Pokemon restricted next to Xerneas, like Groudon, for example, that no longer exists. So Xerneas definitely significantly weaker. It's not nearly the beast that it used to be, but I think it can still definitely work, especially if you don't go up against those steel Pokemon that I mentioned. So Xerneas, I did not want to use a Geomancy power-up set. And part of the reason there is I was like, okay, how can I make Xerneas work? Obviously, you could just make a standard power-up Geomancy set, and I'll probably try to feature that on the channel sometime in the upcoming month, just because I think it is, still definitely viable. But I was like, how can we take advantage of the fact that our opponents often are going to expect the Geomancy? And I thought, why not just use an offensive Life Orb set, right? Often players will spend a lot of effort to try to deny a potential Geomancy or do a lot of damage, right? Deny via something like Taunt or just try to damage you a lot before they expect a Dynamax. And I was thinking, often in those positions, if you have the proper setup, you can maybe just pick up 2 KOs. So if you pick up 2 KOs while your opponent spends their turn trying to deny a Geomancy that doesn't even actually exist, you can obviously go up huge in the battle. So that was kind of the idea behind the Xerneas set. Unfortunately, Xerneas, especially without hidden power being around anymore, doesn't get very good coverage, so you obviously have fairy type attacks. I was kind of tinkling around between Thunderbolt and Psychic, but yeah, I think, Thunderbolt at least gives you an ability to hit steel types for neutral damage, and also combos a little bit better with Thundurus and Rotom, because they can max lightning to set up that electric terrain, which is definitely potentially helpful for Xerneas. So rest of the team, relatively standard. The one thing I want to talk about here is the Choice Scarf Entei. The main reason I have this is because I thought it was a pretty good Zacian counter. Now, it's not going to just directly, while it might match up well against Zacian, like Zacian's often going to have partners to support it, so it's not like it just solves that problem by itself single-handedly. If it were that easy, then of course, Zacian wouldn't be on not every team, but on most teams right now. And so the idea behind this Entei is with Choice Scarf, you outspeed everything in the format other than basically Regieleki. You can catch opponents off guard. Scarf Overheat will one-shot Zacian if they don't have any defensive investment. Even if they do, they'll take a lot of damage, enough where you can finish it off with any other attack. I have Will-O-Wisp because it basically feels like priority Will-O-Wisp, and given the number of physical attackers that are running around right now, things like Thundurus, Landorus, Dragapult, for example, if you can burn them on the turn 1 when they Dynamax, it basically just shuts them down completely, right? So that's huge. Eruption, just general good spread attack, and then Shadow Ball, which helps against like Calyrex, Shadow Rider specifically. Inner Focus, of course, very nice because you won't flinch, and that is a really big deal. So this team is, I think, a little bit more reliant on the best of one factor, right? We're hoping that our opponents don't expect the Life Orb on the Xerneas and the Scarf on the Entei, and we can often overwhelm them immediately just with 2 turns with that combination. So yeah, AV Thundurus, you all know how good that is. It's still such a staple here, so I've had it on the team. I've got Banded Rillaboom, mainly to deal with Lapras, Nasty Plot Rotom, Heat, which I think is just generally pretty good, especially because you can set up in front of Steel types, and then Lagging Tail Grimmsnarl. The reason I'm running Lagging Tail with Trick is because I think on the ladder, there's just so much Trick Room and Tailwind, and this is kind of like a solution that fixes both of those, right? And so it definitely makes the matchup a little bit easier, especially because like there are so many teams that are just like, okay, let me set up Tailwind and Sweep, or let me set up Trick Room and Sweep. So the Grimmsnarl here at least makes it a little bit more difficult for those teams to, just get the ball rolling immediately. And I think Grimmsnarl, also just good priority. Scary Face is really nice, especially when combo with like Rotom to outspeed Zacian. You can Fate Tears to combo with Xerneas, Rotom, and Entei as well. So yeah, I've been rambling on long enough. Let's get into today's episode. Thanks so much as always for watching. If you enjoy, please share support by leaving a like. I'd really appreciate it. Alright, getting into the first matchup of the day, and it is a Zacian team. Okay, so this is where Entei is going to be huge. They only have 1 fire resist in Incin. So, like, Entei, Rotom look really good. This looks really bad for Xerneas, TBH, because they have 2 steel types, and I expect both of them to come out here. So, we're kind of using Xerneas as bait. Might still bring it, but it's kind of iffy, to be honest. Because I really do think, like, Thundurus, Entei... Grimmsnarl Entei is kind of fun here, I think. So, Grimmsnarl, Entei, Rotom... really should be Thundurus, but I don't know. Xerneas is still not, it's not terrible here. But I guess, like, I'm going to bring it because it's our first time playing with the team, and so I just want to feature it, but I think Thundurus you could make a very good argument for, given the dual Intimidate from my opponent's side. So if you're my opponent, you don't want to go dual Intimidate, you can go Whimsicott, Zacian, Celesteela, and Spectrier. So, I do have Max Lightning, though, on the Xerneas, right? So that's actually kind of important, because it does give me a way to hit the Celesteela for damage that they might not be expecting. And they're actually going to go with Whimsicott and Celesteela. Okay. That's fine with me. Just curious, like, do you wide guard here? Because I could Fake Tier Celesteela, or not Fake Tier. Oh, I could Fake Tiers, actually. I definitely want a Eruption. You could max Celesteela. Wide guard is a possibility, but I think most of the time you expect, like... I think you expect the Sacred Fire. So, like, I don't mind going for an Eruption here. If I'm my opponent, what am I doing? Like, Tailwind max Rockfall is a possibility, right? So, Scary Face onto Celesteela Eruption I think is kind of cool here. And they don't max Celesteela, so that's a good sign. It might be Power of Meteor Beam, but yeah, since we have guaranteed speed control with Scary Face, I'll outspeed it. Although, I wonder if Scarf Entei would have outsped anyway. That may have been the case. Either way, we get Eruption off here, which is great for us. And that is almost a KO to Celesteela. It hangs on with literally like 2%, unfortunately for us. If that was a KO, I think we'd probably just win off that, but it's okay. It is going to be Meteor Beam here from the Celesteela. Yep. See. So it's probably going to just target the Entei, get a KO. It is going to connect, yeah. So it's a little bit of a shame Celesteela survives there, but it's okay. I have dropped Celesteela's speed, which is important. And I can go out into Xerneas right now. Would I rather go into Xerneas or Rotom? Like, I like the idea of going to Rotom here, I think. And with Rotom, what do I want to do? I could Nasty Plot. They're going to have Zacian in the back. Who's their Dynamax option? Landorus, maybe? So I could go for another Scary Face on the Celesteela. And Thunderbolt it. If I'm my opponent, I'm probably doubling up on a Grimmsnarl, because I know Grimmsnarl can protect. I think we should outspeed Celesteela, so I could just Thunderbolt here and Spirit Break. And then we can trick the full Incense onto whatever is not Zacian. The only thing I'm worried about here is if Celesteela has like a ton of speed investment. They do go for Helping Hand. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we are faster. Nice. So you can see why I like Scarf Entei, right? It's also just nice with Scary Face stuff as well. And man, if we just picked up that KO turn one, I feel like it's nearly impossible for my opponent to come back from. Because then you either bring in your non-Dynamax option in Zacian, to which I can just go for Scary Face Eruption. And then I would outspeed. Or you bring out your max option, to which I could just trick the full Incense on. That being said, we're still up 3-2. Their Tailwind's going to expire relatively soon. And it's Landorus, okay. So you're going to Dynamax Landorus. You obviously have Zacian in the back. I could Scary Face. That doesn't really accomplish anything here. I think Trick Full Incense onto Landorus is definitely okay. Just nervous about sub Zacian right now. But I think what we can do is probably trick Max Flare here. I guess my only fear is if you max Rockfall and Sacred Sword Rotom. So I'm actually thinking of max guarding, but the only problem once again is Substitute coming up from Zacian here. Let's see, there are still 2 turns of Tailwind left. Yeah, I think I'm going to just Flare into Zacian here and go for the trick here onto the Landorus. Unfortunately, you can't trick onto Zacian, otherwise I would definitely do that. Like, my play, if you could trick onto Zacian, would definitely be to max guard Rotom and trick. The only debate here is whether or not it's worth protecting. But I do feel better about having Xerneas in the back over Thundurus, because like Thundurus would be good if we were able to get the Defiant boost, but we never were in a position for Thundurus to actually be out on the field. So yeah, I mean Eruption Entei was fantastic. It just unfortunately missed out the KO by just a little bit. I could have gone for the Overheat instead, which I think does more because Eruption is spread. But Eruption was just so good in that position, honestly. Also just covered for switches in that spot. I think it may have been better to max guard Rotom here. I don't know, if they actually went Rockfall plus Sacred Sword onto Rotom and that's enough for a KO, that's obviously very bad news for us. Yeah, I think in retrospect, I like max guarding there. Okay, they are Life Orb, which okay, they go for Behemoth Blade, though, which makes me think you're targeting Grimmsnarl, and if I'm trading Grimmsnarl for Zacian, that's a worthwhile trade. Yeah, okay, great. That's a really good turn for us then. I think we win the game off that, to be honest. I think my opponent had to double up onto Rotom there. Getting rid of Life Orb from those Landorus is a huge relief as well, because the Max Flare should one-shot into the Zacian, and I think we actually would have survived Sacred Sword plus Rockfall there anyway, so I think we were probably fine, unless Zacian protected or subbed there. But even if you, let's say you sub, actually if you have sub, you could stall out my Dynamax, and you put on pressure against Xerneas, and then I have to make the question of whether or not to attack with Xerneas. But you can basically see, right, my opponent felt forced to bring 2 Steel types just because of Xerneas, which this team, because it has 2 Fire types, can counteract the Steel types, which is nice. So we'll get the knockout onto Zacian here, and it should just be game over now, because there's, like, my opponent's just attacking last, so I will effectively get at least 3 attacks off in the next 2 turns, right? You're not even KOing most likely with the Rockfall, so I can just go for a Moonblast here. And honestly, I think if we had Thundurus in this in the back, this wouldn't actually be a lock. But because we have Xerneas, it looks very good for us, right? Because we can just go for Moonblast. Whereas regular Thundurus would actually just kind of be dead weight for us. Because of the Citrus Berry, I think we probably were fine anyway on the Rotom. But let's say they crit onto Rotom. I think here, even if they crit, we have the game locked up. And yeah, you can see how much Life Orb Moonblast does there. Over 50%. And Flare is going to finish off the deal here. So, I mean, I think turn 1 was huge, right? Because my opponent was definitely not expecting... They were expecting Entei to just faint immediately, and we were able to do so much damage before fainting. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like some of the components of this team. You have the Scary Face, you have the Eruption, and the fact that you can't, like, fake out or flinch the Entei in general is really nice. So, Entei definitely gave us a huge lead. And then it was just a little bit scary, but the main thing was that Rotom was able to also outspeed that Celesteela, so we picked up 2 free KOs. My opponent did have the opportunity to maybe switch Celesteela out into Landorus there. That could have been pretty interesting. But I don't know what conserving Celesteela really does for you anyway, so yeah. Either way, let's get into this next one. Calyrex Shadow Rider. There's a Mudsdale, which is really interesting. Okay, well, so Entei outspeeds here, and they don't have a single fire resist or immune once again, so Sacred Fire is definitely good for us here. Like, I think it's probably Thundurus, Entei, Dynamax Xerneas is actually a very realistic possibility for us here. And I don't like Grimmsnarl into a matchup when they have Indeedee because of Psychic Terrain, so we probably don't want to bring that. I think Rillaboom probably makes the most sense. Glide, and like, their primary max options are Mudsdale, Calyrex, and Togekiss. And Mudsdale and Calyrex are not going to deal with our glides very well, and if they max Togekiss, well, we have Xerneas. Sorry, we have Thundurus. So, that's the thing with this team. I think, like, in my practice games, I very rarely actually ended up maxing Xerneas. Now, you can, like, for example, if your opponent doesn't have a single fairy resist, which is actually the case in this game, there's actually a very good argument to be made to maxing Xerneas. The main thing is if you max Xerneas, it means you can't max Thundurus, and Thundurus is just such a strong max option. The other cool thing with Thundurus on this team is you can max Darkness, lower your opponent's special defense, and that really, you know, kind of preps them up so that when Xerneas comes out, you just do more damage with your fairy type attacks. So, yeah. But the good thing about the Xerneas here, yeah, Dazzle / Moonblast just does neutral into everything, plus we have Thunderbolt for the Togekiss specifically. Although, I have to double check whether or not Moonblast with Fairy Aura, no, Thunderbolt should still do more, right? I'm just thinking Fairy Aura and same type attack bonus versus just super effectiveness of Thunderbolt. I'd have to actually double check that, but let's see. Either way, yeah, I mean, Entei came up huge, and I lost the Scarf Entei a couple of episodes back on Road to Rank. That's kind of where I drew the inspiration for this one, you know? So, yeah. And it's going to be Rillaboom plus Calyrex. Now, this is really interesting because I actually have Shadow Ball in this Entei. You can't fake out... This is actually really good for us. I don't even know if I need a Shadow Ball here. Like, I can just go Eruption, max Darkness, quite frankly. Max Airstream might be better, because Calyrex could protect here. But this is a really good start for us. Like, I'm very happy about this. I don't think they ever expect Shadow Ball from Entei here. I just don't know if you Dynamax your Calyrex. Like, I think Airstream into this... No, I think it's better to target Calyrex still. So I'm thinking max Airstream and Eruption here. Shadow Ball's just so tempting. But I think most people recognize that max Darkness is a thing, so I could see a switch out here. Okay. I honestly like Max Airstream plus Eruption here. Yeah. Because the thing is, I get a speed boost. They are going to Dynamax Calyrex. Okay, so if I just want Max Darkness plus Shadow Ball, we probably just kind of win the game off there, but I think this is kind of a middle grounds play that covers all of my options, so I don't mind it too much, right? Because I will be able to get a lot of damage off onto Calyrex, and then I still have Max Darkness just for next turn if I want to pick up a KO, and the more important thing is I outspeed your Calyrex after this turn with the Max Airstream. So, I mean, the other play I was thinking about was Shadow Ball, Max Darkness into Calyrex, but like Calyrex could have easily protected there, and then you could switch out the Rillaboom into Indeedee, then you have redirection support the subsequent turn, and I really don't want that, because the thing about fighting Calyrex is it's not just the current turn that you have to deal with, it's the second turn, especially if they are able to bring in redirection support safely. So Airstream Eruption covers for the potential redirection switches. Okay, so we get Eruption off, which is nice. They're going to actually up for Phantasm. That's very risky into a Defiant Thundurus. It's really surprising to me, but we'll take that. Because to be honest, I think we just win the game now, honestly. Unless Airstream doesn't KO, but we're at +2 attack. I'd be shocked if it doesn't. So, kind of surprised by that from my opponent's end. But yeah, one of the things, this isn't just a Xerneas team, right? It's very much an Entei team as well. Okay, Calyrex hangs on with just the Sliver, but that's fine, honestly, because another Eruption would just KO it at this point. I mean, can Rillaboom KO Thundurus after that defense drop? Because otherwise, that's a really risky play. No, they just go for knockoff here onto Entei. That's fine with me. Yeah, so they get rid of my Scarf, but like we did so much damage there already, right? You see the Entei is also faster, so I just am really surprised they were willing to I mean, this is one reason why EV Thundurus is really good, right? There are a lot of special Dynamax Pokemon. So let's see. They have no switch-ins into an Eruption. I don't want to Eruption because they could... I think it's better to just go for Shadow Ball here. Yeah. I don't think Glide's going to KO Entei here, right? So I think Knuckle into Rillaboom and just Shadow Ball into Calyrex is fine here. Yep, they Max Guard. That's fine. Max Guard and then Glide into Entei would make a lot of sense. Yeah. Almost picks up the KO. You know what play I actually like a little bit more? No, I don't know if I actually like that much. I was going to say like switching Entei out, but I don't know if I actually vibe with that too much. My only question now is, does Eruption do enough to KO Calyrex Shadow Rider from the range that it's at? Because we're only at 26 HP. But we can lower Calyrex's special defense with the Max Darkness. So I would think Max Dark, because I was just thinking if Indeedee comes out right now, right? But once again, this is why I love Entei, because if you lead Entei with something like in Dynamax, it basically invalidates Fake Out as a lead, which is super good. They just bring out Urshifu, which is fine. So let's see. I have Will-O-Wisp, so I'm going to go for Will-O-Wisp here for sure. And I'm going to go for an Airstream onto Calyrex. Yeah. Because Will-O-Wisp just basically makes Urshifu completely useless, right? And they actually switch out, which is really interesting. I guess trying to bait out Sucker Punch into Togekiss, okay. Well, that's actually a really good switch for them, because it makes Will-O-Wisp invalid here. Or not invalid, I mean, I'll still burn Togekiss, but I think Xerneas wins the endgame now. In playing with this team, if you're trying it out, basically you have to get rid of the Steel types first, which is often why you can't Dynamax Xerneas. If the opportunities where you Dynamax Xerneas is when your opponent's Steel type is something where you can lower their special defense. Something like Dialga, that's actually probably the best example. Everything else you can't really knock out with Xerneas anyway. So, yeah, I mean, this is great. We're obviously up 4-2. We have an attack boost on the Thundurus. Togekiss is basically forced to follow me at this point, because I think if I just go Will-O-Wisp onto Urshifu and Wild Charge onto Togekiss, that covers all of my bases. Plus, my Xerneas is max speed, so Xerneas should win against the Urshifu plus the Togekiss endgame. So, yeah, once again, it's Scarf Entei coming up huge, but my opponent made this game a little bit easier for me because they Phantasm into Thundurus turn 1, which gave us a Defiant boost. Something like Max Psychic might have been a little bit better for them there. So, I'm just going to go for... Oh, you know, they could Sucker Punch here. We do have a defense drop. Yeah, actually, if you're my opponent, what's your play here? Go for Follow Me, Sucker Punch into Thundurus? So let's not fall for that. Let's just switch out into Xerneas here and go for an Overheat. I actually like Eruption more because it breaks Sash. Now the only question I'm asking is, like, is there a way that I could have thrown the game by going for this play? But I think even if you pick up a double KO, it's probably fine. Actually, maybe not. But yeah, they went for... I think you have to Sucker Punch Landorus there, right? It's just so tough if you don't. We get Overheat off onto Urshifu. Nice. So now Dazzle should just win the game. Regardless of what Togekiss goes for, it's going to just be Air Slash onto Entei. Perfect. Yeah, I mean, Scarf Entei is honestly a really cool thing, but it's not just the Scarf Entei. It's the Scarf Entei in combination with other Pokemon that can Dynamax, right? Like, that's a really big component. So, yeah, now we can just bring out our Rillaboom. Don't have Fake Out on this team, but that's fine, because we can just... I think Banded Glide into Life Orb Dazzle should pick up the KOs here. Not 100% sure, but I think. Either way, yep, we can just Gleam and Glide, and... Yeah, like... You've all seen how good Assault Vest Thundurus is in this format, and I think this game is a prime example why. Part of it is that Calyrex Shadow Rider is a very, very big threat to a lot of Pokemon in the format, and so AV Thundurus not only helps against that, also helps against things like Kyogre, for example, and so I think it would have been very tough for my opponent to win the game after turn 1. The fact that they didn't have Indeedee in that last one was also helpful, because if you can't redirect attacks away, like after turn 1, we were just in a really, really good spot. And that's one of the reasons why I really like the Entei specifically on this team, because there's so much Fake Out right now, right? Grimmsnarl, Rillaboom, Incineroar, just to name a couple of examples, and so if you can lead anti-Fake Out, it's very good. We're also very lucky today to not run into a single Zacian matchup, although I guess here my opponent is Venusaur and Celesteela, which isn't really ideal. So Thundurus is good. I still want to bring Xerneas out, to be honest, but I'm not really sure I should. This does not feel like the Xerneas matchup. If I'm my opponent, I'm bringing Groudon, Venusaur, Celesteela for sure. And then maybe Rotom. Or Grimmsnarl. So, I like Grimmsnarl Thundurus lead. Rotom's insanely good against my opponent's team, so I feel like that really feels like a must-bring. Maybe I don't bring Entei then, which is curious. I do have Thunderbolt on Xerneas, so it actually helps against Celesteela. Alright. I might be forcing Xerneas a little too hard here. You know, typically I give the advice, like, don't force a Pokemon if you don't need it, but I do want to see how good Xerneas can be in a matchup like this, because if there is also... Well, I guess I'm leading Thundurus, right? So I would probably not. There's so many different lead combos we had with this matchup, which is often a good thing. Like I always say, the more options you have, the better, because it means you're not hard-locked into just playing the game a certain way just to avoid losing immediately. But I'm not sure if I made the absolute best decisions here. So, let's see. Let's see. I think that... What am I nervous about here? Like, Groudon Venu's not that scary. Our Grimmsnarl will be able to provide a lot of support. They're going to go with Grimmsnarl and Groudon. Okay, so, like, maybe I should have brought Rillaboom then, specifically against this. Xerneas is actually not half bad against this, though. But the thing is that Groudon often is going to want to go for a Rock Fall or Swords Dance. I definitely want to go for a Trick here onto Groudon. Yeah, this was not a great lead by my end. My opponent definitely outled me here, so well done to them. Kind of want to go for a Fly here, to be honest. You might be wondering why, but the idea is just if Groudon maxes and goes for Rock Fall turn 1, for example. Okay, they didn't max. That's going to typically indicate Swords Dance, I think, on turn 1. It could just be Rock Slide as well. So the thing is, I'll trick the full instance on the Groudon, and I can also Fake Tears, and then bring in Rotom and just Max Flare it. So it's not that bad. Lumberry, okay, interesting. But yeah, like I said, my opponent definitely outled me here. Yep, it is Swords Dance, which is not great. It's okay, though. I really think it might be dependent on what kind of other attacks the Grimmsnarl has here, but I think the Fake Tears will definitely help us out. But I don't know, if I actually just led Xerneas or Rotom, and or if I even have Rillaboom in the back, right? Because if I have Rillaboom in the back, I could just bring it in and boom, go for a Grassy Glide. And then your Groudon is Wood Hammer, and then your Groudon is forced to Dynamax just to survive, which would be pretty interesting. But you can see now they're not Dynamaxing, which is smart. I think that's absolutely the right play. They're probably just going to go for a Rock Slide. So we get a little bit of chip here. I maybe should have targeted the Groudon instead with this Fly. Pretty good damage on a Grimmsnarl, though, so I can't complain. It's probably, yeah, Spirit Break plus Rock Slide here. Might just be a double KO. Which is definitely scary. Should be a double KO, actually, to be honest. Yeah. So I think my opponent absolutely anticipated the Thundurus lead, because they're like, hey, I have Venusaur, I have Celesteela, so the Swords Dance, you can see why like Swords Dance plus Rock Slide is like a really strong combination on Groudon, right? So I definitely got outled here. And Grimmsnarl plus SD Groudon was not something I really anticipated too much. So, Rotom-Heat could have been nice. Xerneas could have been... I think Rotom-Heat was probably the right lead here. Like, Grimmsnarl Rotom-Heat feels pretty good. So let's see. I'm hoping they taunt into us. How can we win this game? If they have Venusaur in the back, I can obviously Flare to KO Groudon right now. I could pick up a double KO. The only thing is I might not necessarily want to. Although then they're going to Spirit Break us, which isn't good. So, yeah, I guess I'll just Moonblast into Grimmsnarl. And I think Rotom is the correct Pokemon to Dynamax because it has a pretty favorable matchup against what's potentially in the back as well. I'm hoping Max Flare against -2 Spadef Groudon in Sun KOs. Now, they have Light Screen, so I'm not 100% sure on that. They could switch Groudon out here pretty easily as well if you wanted to. What you're switching into a Max Flare, the only thing is... Oh, you have Rotom, Wash, and Incineroar. But I don't know how likely it is that my opponent brought those. I think Venusaur should definitely in the back. So they're not going to switch, which is good. But the question here is... Like, in the end, that full instance wasn't even that helpful. I just don't know the 4th attack on Grimmsnarl. Like, if it's actually Trick, that'd be... Trick full instance, that'd be bad. But if you're using both screens, you're often going to be Light Clay, right? So I don't think it's that much of an issue. I don't know. Maxing Xerneas could have been kind of cool in this one. Oh, they just maxed Groudon. I should have doubled up onto it then. That was a really good play. I wonder if they max guard here, because I would think Life Orb Moonblast into Flare KOs. Given that they're at -2 special defense, but I'm not 100% sure on that. They don't have a berry though, so I'd actually think that is enough. Yep, they get light screen up. That was really nice. I don't know. I just really didn't think they'd max Groudon from that position. But I really should have considered it. In fact, like I said, if I actually doubled up onto the Groudon there, that might just be a game-winning play right there. It's just a question of how much the Moonblast plus the Flare do. But because they're not buried, I actually think it's enough to KO. So, like, I was worried about Spirit Break there, but the thing is that you should Light Screen in that position. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Moonblast... I think it would have KO'd. We should Faint for Max Quake, so that's probably game over. But really well played by my opponent. These games have also been pretty fast-paced, so... We're going to be able to fit in 4 games here, looks like. Yeah, I think Moonblast would have done the job there. Like, that's why I thought it was really risky for my opponent to max the Groudon. Even if I weren't Life Orbed, like, you know, if Groudon faints there, it does feel like you just lose the game. But I guess because they have Venusaur in the back and the sun is up, you could just Sleep Powder Rotom anyway, so they're probably okay with, you know, that potential. You'd have to Rockfall here. I think I just have to hope for Sleep Powder misses. Like, I'm not going to give up because the game is still definitely winnable. But if they hit Sleep Powder here, it's probably GG. So, this was a game in which I think my opponent kind of called me out on my leads, and they did a really good job with that. Tricking Full Instance isn't really that valuable on Groudon when you consider how fast my team is. Oh, they actually protect Venusaur, okay. They're protecting Groudon as well? Okay. That makes sense. Although, I could have just flared Venusaur there. I don't know. I mean, I guess they're stalling out my Dynamax. Yeah, Do you have Protect and Sleep Powder? Maybe you don't have Sleep Powder, but then you're just going to outdamage me at this point. I wonder if Flare and Sun was enough to KO. No. With Light Screen up, no way. Yeah, so they did not have Sleep Powder, which is why they went for the double. Okay, that makes sense, because even if I target Venusaur, you'll survive, and then you'll probably be fine. So, what I needed to do this game was double up on a Groudon. If we double up on a Groudon, though, I'm still not sure it's a guaranteed win, but... I think the thing is then Rotom's looking really good against my opponent's team. I just didn't want Grimmsnarl to Spirit Break into the Xerneas slot, but I guess that's probably okay because Rotom is just good against my opponent's team. So, you typically don't want, you know, to give a Swords Dance boost onto... And this is honestly still winnable. Like, Rotom was just so good into this matchup in the late game, so didn't utilize it well enough in the early. I'm gonna hope... No, I mean, I think our win con is them to not be Sash Venusaur. Oh, we could just be faster than Venusaur. Hold on. That actually could be a big deal. It's a question of, are you Meteor Beam Celesteela? Or Focus Sash Venusaur? Because Sash is most likely on Venusaur. And they just Air Slash. So the thing is, Rotom will actually win against Celesteela if we knock out the Venusaur here. So I'm just gonna Overheat into it. Sash is so common, but Koba Berry is really the more common item on Venusaurs nowadays, so... Yeah, we're faster. If this one-shots, I think we win. Are you Sashed? Is that AV? No, it's not AV. Ah, the light screen was up. And its weakness policy. Sorry, I actually shouldn't be surprised by that. That also explains why they max guarded. Although, hilariously enough, if we actually flared into that max guard, like, we would have done enough damage, and then we could have solved the sun, and then Overheat would have won. So, yeah. Yeah, policy Venusaur is a thing. That's not, like, super crazy to see. Bringing Rillaboom over Xerneas may have helped. Xerneas wasn't bad here, but it was definitely a little bit limiting. But yeah, the main thing is I wasn't expecting the Groudon max there. That was a really good max, but it was risky as well. But I think from my opponent's perspective, because you're probably expecting Geomancy Xerneas, they're like, I have to KO the Xerneas right now. Okay, we got our last match here, and they have Necrozma Duskmane. So that's definitely not something Xerneas wants to see. So our dual fires are going to be important here, but Geomancy is also a big problem, especially if it's sashed. Entei with Bulldoze, definitely a possibility. So I think I like Grimmsnarl plus Entei here. And I think Xerneas plus Rotom. Like, Rotom is probably the right max option, but Xerneas can still do a fair amount of damage, offensive-wise here. But this is the typical problem with Xerneas, right? You can't basically do anything against max steel types. And with Necrozma as a max steel type here, it's pretty tricky. Especially if it's Bulldoze stuff. Yeah, it's probably Brutal Swing here with Thundurus. We can always trick away the item, and this is where Entei could be handy, because it can just go for Eruption. Will-O-Wisp is also interesting, but the question is what set Thundurus is. I mean, normally it's AV, you Brutal Swing into Policy here, right? I could Fake Tears Overheat here. That's actually really tempting. Because if we do that and we KO, it just sets up Xerneas to win. I'm actually down for that. I guess the only problem is if Necrozma survives, like you max, you Brutal Swing, they are gonna max. But even if you activate Policy, like I can just outspeed with Xerneas, right? Or Rotom. You should just KO. So I think it's fine. I just don't think Fake Tears into Overheat actually KOs because they Dynamaxed. But I don't know if Will-O-Wisp is really worth it there for us. Could also go for the KO into Thundurus. Okay, so we'll get Fake Tears off. They're not going for priority on Thundurus, so probably just a Brutal Swing here. We'll get the Overheat off. Yeah, it's not enough for a KO, but I think that's fine, because I think it sets up Xerneas now. And even if we'd replaced Policy, like it doesn't make that much of a difference. Yeah. It's Fling! A Starfberry. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I actually don't know what boost you get from that. Special defense? Defense? Defense. Okay. And they're gonna Quake. Yeah, that's fine. Because the thing is, now we've actually set up the Xerneas, right? I can just Dynamax Xerneas. My only fear is that this should be Prankster Thundurus. So we probably go into Rotom Heat, right? We go into Rotom Heat first and just Overheat. Yeah, I think that's the play. And then we max Xerneas in the late game. I can also trick the full Incense onto Thundurus, although that actually doesn't make much of a difference if it is Prankster Eerie Impulse, which I suspect it is. You know what? I think I'd rather just spare a break here. I don't even think I get anything out of Trick. Like, in fact, I think we should conserve the Trick. The thing here is whether or not I want to read into a Protect on Necrozma and go for, like, a Nasty Plot instead, but I don't want to risk it. Like, even if you max guard here, it's totally fine for us. So, that was a good turn for us, turn 1 for us, for sure. Being able to do that much damage is good, and I think, once again, very few people expect the Fake Tears into Special Entei combination double up, so getting that much damage turn 1 immediately is great. I just think it's probably Eerie Impulse plus Taunt. They do go for max guard, yep. So, like, had the opportunity to Nasty Plot there. How interesting, it's Superpower. Okay, I honestly wasn't expecting that, but this means that you're actually probably Defiant Thundurus, which could pose a problem for us. I honestly thought it would just be Supportive Thundurus, so the thing is I might have just given it a Defiant boost, which is very scary, right? But I think that's fine. Let's see. They're at -1 defense. We have Scary Face, so I think we just lower this thing's speed and then KO the KO Necrozma, because then Xerneas just maxes and I think one-shots everything in the late game here. That's a good switch. That's a really good switch. What's coming in? Into their own Entei. I guess the scary thing here is now can Xerneas actually close out the match? Because against Entei, if you're Snarl Entei, that's obviously a problem. So that was a really good switch. I think if I overheated into Thundurus, like, I mean, I could have obviously read both of these last two turns, the Protect and the Switch. So, nice job on their end to just consolidate that and conserve it. And they're going to KO their Rotom here. So we get Thundurus in. I can Fake Tears into Entei. And Dazzle. Should probably max though, but if I max, then I actually can't. I can't KO both. And Thundurus has way too many Defiant boosts right now, so that's obviously a problem. I probably gave up Rotom Heat too easily in this game. They did a really good job KOing it. I just wasn't sure. Like, I think the main mistake was going for the Spirit Break into Thundurus, because like you shouldn't go for that unless you're confident that it's Prankster, and it wasn't. Because I think if I just nasty plotted with the Rotom the turn that they'd superpowered, we probably would have just won the game off that, because I think Rotom just wins against their entire team, so I should have played towards that win con a little bit better. But it's okay. I think I'll go for Fake Tears onto Entei here and a Dazzling Gleam. I kind of need, I need a KO Thundurus. The other play would have been Fake Tears. Actually, I like this more. I like Fake Tears into Entei and then Max Starfall, or no, Max Lightning into Thundurus. Because the thing is, the Max Lightning sets up terrain, so then another Max Lightning can just KO Entei the subsequent turn. Because you're probably just going to go for Sacred Fire here, right? Oh, but they miss. Okay, that's a really big miss. Because the thing is, like, that doesn't KO, but it does so much damage, so I think I needed a Max there just to not take damage. This was not a well-played game on my end. Like, I think my opponent definitely played better than I did after turn 1. Turns 2 and 3, like, turn 1 I played better, turn 2 and 3 they definitely got the better end of it. But they bring out Darmanitan now, so I think we can just win off a Scary Face into Darmanitan. Even if you're Scarf, we Dynamax Xerneas and then just Starfall into Darm. The question basically is how much Sacred Fire from Entei would have done post-Dynamax, but the problem is that my Grimmsnarl is never winning the game from an offensive standpoint, right? So in order to win this one, I really think it would have probably just been better to have Max Lightning last turn, because we could easily win the game down 2-4. Now, I don't know how offensive their Entei is, but I don't really have that much bulk on Xerneas, and if it burnt us, that would be even worse as well. So, let's see. Yeah. This is why I like the Scary Face tech, by the way, because like you don't have to worry about missing a Thunder Wave. Just dropping something speed immediately is really nice. Yeah, so I think that should win us the game now, but I don't know. I think if they hit that Sacred Fire, you would need to hit 3 Sacred Fires to win this game from my opponent's perspective, I think. So a single miss and we're probably good, but the fact that the miss came from the first one just makes this game so much easier. So in the end, I think like Rotom Heat was the better win con to play towards, and I definitely should not have gone for Spirit Break onto Thundurus until I could have confirmed its item. That's, I don't know, I mean, we would have survived Sacred Fire into this one, I think, but another one, like I said, you would need to hit 3 to win, right? And the odds of that aren't super slim. So, let's see, we can just Spirit Break into Entei and go for a Max Lightning here onto Solgaleo. Well, actually, it's better to just Starfall, right? Because we want the terrain to be up. Yeah, because then you can't burn us. The one thing we don't want to happen is let Trick Room go up in this position, right? I'm just trying to think how we can, like, throw the game right now. Let's say they crit into Xerneas and you protect. Does that matter? I don't think so. Yeah, I'll just Spirit Break into Entei then. And go for the... I'll guess I'll Lightning just in case it actually somehow survives Starfall. Okay, they don't protect either, so that should be game over. But like I said, like, this was definitely... Well, I suppose because we have Spirit Break, even if you hit all 3 Sacred Fires, then I probably wouldn't have Lightning here. I would have stuck with Starfall, so then you can't burn with Sacred Fire into Grimmsnarl. The question is whether or not 2 Spirit Breaks from Grimmsnarl is enough to knock out Entei from the percent that it's at. I'm not sure it is. I actually missed another Sacred Fire, so that's one of the other reasons I like running Overheat Eruption over Sacred Fire. I don't think, yeah, 2 Sacred Fires was, sorry, 2 Spirit Breaks was not enough there, but, like, if we just get 1 miss, we win the game. However, the fact is that we had a really early lead, and we really didn't play well after the next 2 turns, so my opponent made, like, back-to-back perfect plays to keep themselves in this effectively. I think it may have been smarter to just have actually gone for Thunderbolt onto... Actually, Thunderbolt was definitely the right play instead of Overheat onto the Entei slot. Or, sorry, onto the turn Necrozma switched out. Because what are we... Like, they're already at -2 special defense. Thunderbolt's definitely picking the knockout from there. It also covers for an Entei switch. So, yeah. But this game can highlight how you can dynamic... Like, Xerneas is very good if you get rid of the steel types. It's just, like, often getting rid of the steel types is a very, very difficult thing to actually accomplish. So, we were able to do so much damage in the beginning of this game that we were actually able to pull that off, but there's no reason to have fallen behind after... Like, turn 2, fine. That was a safe turn. But I shouldn't have gone for the Spirit Break. Yeah, I think, like, going for... It's probably acceptable to trick onto Thundurus, actually, because I can still Scary Face into anything else that's in the back. So if I were to replay that, turn 2, I'd go for the trick. Then, you know, Thundurus is just moving last. We see the superpower. Now we know that it's, you know, an offensive set as well. So then turn 3, I don't need a Spirit Break. What I can do... Or I could Spirit Break and Thunderbolt into a Necrozma slot. That also covers a switch in, and then we survive a superpower as well. The Thundurus being at -1 attack is really useful effectively as a dead slot for my opponent. So I think, had I just not gone for Spirit Break on turn 2 onto Thundurus, this game would have already pretty much been wrapped up. The problem is that I turned Thundurus into an offensive threat when I had already... After turn 2, if we didn't Spirit Break, we basically had our opponent pinned. But in the end, Xerneas got to max, so we'll take it. But like I said, that's a great example of a game where we had an early lead, didn't really capitalize off it, and in the end, like, probably got a little bit lucky to win that game, right? Like I said, if they hit every Sacred Fire there, Xerneas actually probably goes down. I think you need to hit 3, because, like, the first one I think does over 50%, but then I Dynamax, and then... Well, I don't know if it does over 50%. The question is whether 2 more would KO us while maxed, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm thinking they likely needed to hit 3, but... yeah, I think it was definitely 3, so... but the thing is, like, had we just played better, we wouldn't have been in a position to potentially need a Sacred Fire miss, right? And so, like, that was the main mistake, in my opinion, in this game. Like, being in a position where we could have let RNG affect it. And, in fact, we actually needed to maybe get a little bit lucky to win in the end. And so, this is a good example of how sometimes, like, you can point out, hey, like, maybe you won, but that doesn't mean, like, you played the cleanest to get there, right? And I think this was a good example of a game where there were clearly some mistakes, namely on turns 2 and 3. As soon as I saw Fling, I don't know why I didn't think it would, like, wouldn't be a Defiant, like, set instead, and had in my head that it would be a Prankster set instead. So that was the kind of the mistake. But yeah, that's going to be it for this one. So thank you so much for watching my Xerneas team. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a rental and a paste down in the description below. Thank you so much as always for watching. Leave a like if you did enjoy, and I'll catch you all next time. All right, peace.